Hello and welcome. Welcome to this auspicious week, Vesak week, when around the world Buddha Day is celebrated, the main Buddhist celebration of the year being the full moon of May, which is actually tomorrow, the full moon on the 24th. And here in Sri Lanka, when Vesak is celebrated, followed by an additional public holiday the day after, which I'm sure will be extended through Friday and the weekend, as festivals are here. Around the world, however, depending on different traditions, Vesak is celebrated today on the day before Tuesday, and so we can call it a week. In fact, you'll see that most celebrations will have occurred in monasteries over last weekend or this coming weekend, when it's convenient for people to attend the monasteries, offer flowers, requisites. The residents there, monks and lay people, will decorate the monastery in all its splendour, paying homage to the stupas, and generally having a wonderful time to celebrate and recollect the Buddha. The other holy days for Buddhists in the year are Dharma Day and Sangha Day, which celebrate the initial teachings of the Dharma and the coming together of the Sangha later on in the year. These three auspicious Buddhist holidays represent the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. The Buddha being our teacher, the fully enlightened Sakyamuni Buddha, a mortal human being, Siddhartha Gautama, whom on this day was to be born in Lumbini, now in Nepal, and became enlightened under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, and then finally passed away, died in Kushinagar, attaining to his final parinibbana. These three significant occasions in the Buddha's life are celebrated on this Vesak, this day. And it represents our day to pay respects and homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Now also, around the world, for this last weekend and the week prior, many have been celebrating the 90th birthday coming of age of Longpo Sumedho, Ajahn Sumedho, Bhikkhu Sumedho, the probably longest standing Western Buddhist monk in the Thai Forest tradition, and the most certainly highly acclaimed and I surely believe attained also teachers, whom is largely responsible with the encouragement, direction and teachings of Ajahn Chah of the Thai Forest tradition for bringing this tradition, this school, this form of Buddhism to the West. An American born, then travelling through Asia and ordained in Thailand under Ajahn Chah. He established the first Buddhist monastery in England in the Thai Forest tradition, which was my first experience of Buddhism, because it was somewhere quite close to where I was living that I was able to visit much later in my life. But a long time after Ajahn Sumedho had been practicing in Thailand and then in England and around the world in this tradition, in fact ordained in 1967, the year of my birth. So he now has my age, I suppose, 57. I'm not sure if I'm 57 or 58 this year, but he has 57 or 58, I think 58 vasas. That is rains, monsoon seasons in the robes behind him. And not only though is he very established in this tradition as being ordained for such a long time as a bhikkhu, his teachings have become renowned throughout the world. He's very well respected as being one of the foremost teachers of the Dharma in this modern day and age, especially in the West. Being of an English mother tongue, he has such expertise to transmit the Dharma to us English-speaking people. Although he's fluent in Thai, he's been able to translate for the benefit of us whom aren't the teachings of Ajahn and the Buddha as taught by him to us. And for this I am extraordinarily grateful, because without such teachers in the world, and specifically such a teacher, I probably wouldn't have become a monk, become ordained, not necessarily in this tradition, but any tradition. Because it was listening to the talks of such an eloquent teacher in my own mother tongue that led me to being able to understand what Buddhism truly is. And it's from his Dharma talks that I've learnt so much. So this is a big celebration in the West and throughout the Ajahn monasteries around the world. It's been brought forward because his actual birthday is later on in July, when we approach the next auspicious occasion in Buddhism, which is the coming Vasa, the monsoon season. Now, the monsoon has really begun here already in Sri Lanka. The actual physical raining aspect of the Vasa does begin somewhat earlier here, and where traditionally it comes from, India, where it begins around the full moon of July, continuing for about 3 months of the rainy time. The Buddha's region, where he was born, taught, and finally died in northeast India, the foothills of the Himalayas, what is now Nepal, was his area of mainly roaming with his monks between various familiar locations that you will hear of regularly in the suttas, where he taught the Sangha. And he ensured that at this particular time of year, in the rainy time, monks stay put for that 3-month period we call the Vasa. And it is that also that denotes the time a monk has been in the robes. So approaching 60 Vasas, someone like Ajahn Sumedho has an enormous amount of experience living as a monk. Now, of course, though, there are bhikkhus, monks, of more than 60 Vasas. Many monks, perhaps, whom ordained at a very young age. I think Ajahn Sumedho was in his 20s, maybe late 20s when he ordained. You can work it out, even nearly 30. But many monks in Asia will have ordained from the earliest possible age 20. So at the age of 80 would have 60 Vasas behind them. But that, of course, although they deserve the utmost respect for living this life for such a long time, and do get that, of course it doesn't necessarily mean that their area of expertise is either in teaching or in meditation. We're all different. Now, the recognition of a teacher is extremely important for us to understand and to consider, because it is from that source that we really receive the word of the Buddha, the Dharma. After the Buddha's parinibbana in Kushinaga, according to the sutras, a splendid occasion where all sorts of wonderful, miraculous things were going on, his statement was that this was not my legacy. What is my legacy is the Vinaya, the Dharma. So the way that the Sangha lives and continues to propagate these teachings of the Dharma, which is the truth of existence, the characteristic of existence, but the core teachings of the Buddha. This is the Buddha's legacy. Not the miracles, not all of the wonderful things that we recognize when we're paying homage to the Buddha, the qualities of such an enlightened being, and those of the Dharma and the Sangha, but that, the Dharma, its very self. But of course, without a teacher, it can be very difficult for us to find and understand the Dharma. The Buddha is so called Sama Sambuddhasa, Sama Buddha, because he is perfectly enlightened, in that there was no Buddha, or Buddhism, as it came to be called, around in his time, and he was to become enlightened through his own investigation. Firstly, his ascetic years, very harsh, emaciating his body and practically dying until he decided that this was not the way, and establishing what we now talk about all of the time and learn and practice as the Dharma, this middle way, the path towards enlightenment or Nibbana. He taught the Four Noble Truths to point us in this direction. The Four Noble Truths of suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, or that there is a potential end of suffering, and the path leading to the end of suffering, this Noble Eightfold Path, encompassing this practice of moral virtue, of meditation, and the development of wisdom. And the lineage of monks and nuns thereafter, subsequent to his parinibbana, have continued these teachings, and it is they we look to and pay respects to be enlightened ourselves of the Dharma, to come to know and understand fully the Four Noble Truths, to appreciate all of the rites, rituals, celebrations on these such auspicious occasions and events which enable many people of this same faith to come together with the shared knowledge of the Dharma, paying the shared respects to the original teacher, the Buddha, and really create and bring together this wonderful body of the fourfold assembly, being that of the monks and the nuns, the laymen and the lay women. Of course, the monks and nuns are living in somewhat different circumstances to lay people, but we are all working towards the same end, to become free from suffering in this lifetime as the Buddha taught. And this, as lay people, is accompanied by keeping just 5 precepts of no killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying or taking of intoxicants. But in the case of ordained bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, we have many more supportive rules and guidelines, 227 for bhikkhus and 311 for the nuns, the bhikkhunis, which are contained in the Patimokkha. But in the Vinaya Pitaka, that was the legacy of the Buddha that he mentioned on his dying as his final words, that this is his legacy, is what enables those monks and nuns to demonstrate by their example and the way they live the Dharma in practical ways, to demonstrate and to teach the Four Noble Truths as that, just that, the truth. So this is what makes a teacher apart from just someone who's been a monk for a very long time. What stands out as such an outstanding and phenomenal teaching ability is that ability of such an individual that we pay so much respects to, such as Ajahn Chah and the monks in his lineage, and in the West, the most senior of those, Ajahn Sumedho. Their ability to convey those Four Noble Truths as the very facts, not as something to be intellectually analysed, not as something or a method, not the Noble Eightfold Path to be learnt, but actual facts to be seen for ourselves, experientially. Experientially. If a barrister goes into the courtroom and he has to defend a very difficult case, a very difficult situation, with which he is not entirely convinced himself as to whether or not, say for example, that individual is guilty or not guilty. Now, of course, as a lawyer, he cannot know for sure. If he was to know it's guilty, I think he has to not act. But on the assumption he is acting in the best interests of his clients, to argue the case for that individual's innocence, he would have to work solely on the basis of providing as much information intellectually in order to really, in a way, confuse the audience, confuse the listeners, confuse the jury, throw so much facts and information, well, so much technical knowledge in that direction that it can fuel just sufficient doubt in their minds to be unable to convict that individual as guilty. Just enough doubt. But to give them just enough doubt, they have to quote this law, this precedent, that precedent, and have an immense knowledge and talking skill and ability to bamboozle, to really cloud everybody's views and understanding and make them think, oh well, there's enough doubt there, this we cannot be so sure, we'll go with the benefit of the doubt. It's an expression, the benefit of the doubt, and this person will walk free. Now that is a skill, that is a technique, but it's a trick. Now if this same barrister walks into the court before the jury, his audience really, and he's absolutely unequivocally no doubt himself that the person is innocent, he has all the documentary proof to that effect, he only needs to say very little. Present the actual facts of the case. Present the truth of the case that he has come to learn from his client, so his knowledge. This is enough for the jury to actually give a verdict of not guilty based on facts, the evidence. Not the benefit of the doubt, but facts, the evidence. Now this is the Dharma. We are not required with the Dharma to believe. We are not quite required of the Dharma to perform ritualistic activities of worship, prayer, ceremonies, but we can, with an aim to bringing us all together in these communities as Kalyana Mita, noble friends, beautiful friendships on the path towards Nibbana. Those of us all whom are like-minded, trying to become free from suffering in this lifetime through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, as taught by the Buddha and his successors. So where you see such incredible teachers as Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Sumedho as being so able to convey the Dharma, you recognize that it is that they are teaching the Dharma with absolute faith in the knowledge that the Buddha taught just the truth. He in fact said that his legacy, being the Vinaya, is that to protect the Sangha in order that they can convey this Dharma, these teachings, for the millennia to come. Thus far, 2,568 years since the time of the Buddha, and to keep that Sangha strong, and the faith, as in saddha, confidence, in the Dharma and the Sangha of the lay people, going for all of this time. So there's always room for these ceremonies and these events, as are being celebrated all over the world this week with Wesak. And there's always room for celebrations of such wonderfully amazing individuals as Ajahn Sumedho, Longpo Sumedho, and anniversaries of the great teachers and Kruba Ajahns of the past. This is to remind ourselves of not only those individuals and their compassion for all others to share the Dharma, but of our own personal gratitude. Gratitude which is a virtue in itself. Having gratitude for the knowledge that's been given to us out of compassion from others, handed down over all of these millennia through successive generations of monks and nuns and lay people to this day, bringing the likes of me from a non-Buddhist place in the world, far from this as a religion, far from the teachings of the Buddha, to, by my very good fortune, I hope, think, karma, my good actions of body, speech and mind, maybe in previous lifetimes, that kept an ember burning of Dharma within me. Only that when I heard just this snippet, it was again brought back to light. The flame of Dharma was reignited in me. But only on hearing the Buddha's teachings in the form that I did, and was so fortunate to hear through teachers like Ajahn Sumedho and his most respected Sangha thereafter, I was able to see the Four Noble Truths as just that. Suffering we cannot dispute. All beings experience suffering. For that to be the case, a cause of suffering, this also, it cannot be disputed. Everything has a cause. And if there is something, there has to be an end. All things, as we learn through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, are impermanent, including suffering, but also including happiness, contentment, will come to an end if it's of a conditioned nature. All materialistic gain, emotions, fame, fortune, wealth, all are impermanent. Everything we gain, we can lose. All those whom we love, we will be parted from, as they will be parted from us. All conditioned things are impermanent. And this is true also for suffering. So there is an end. And then the Noble Eightfold Path, right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right effort, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation, is the very simple step-by-step guide to this very existence. This very existence, subject to anicca, dukkha, anatta, impermanence, suffering, and out of our control, not self, is made so much more fruitful and beneficial when we recognize it as the opportunity for us, like the Buddha and his subsequent Sangha and many noble teachers since, to find enlightenment in ourselves, for ourselves. But, as the Buddha taught, experientially, by the wise, by those who understand the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path, and those who understand these characteristics of existence, not through learning, not through hearing the arguments for, the arguments against, in terms of huge technical volumes of information, but just seeing experientially for themselves, with the guidance of their teachers, that this is what we have, here and now, in this moment. This is what we have to work with. All that's gone before is past, is just that, memory. And as you know, our memories will adapt, edit themselves, change over time, eventually go away, disappear, fade. But nothing can be done to change the past. That is that. It's gone. And as far as the future is concerned, it is just imagination or expectation. And none of that can do anything more than cause more suffering. For expectation, there can be disappointment. Occasionally, things might go according to plan, but not always will be even that a positive end result. Because the result always will be, in terms of our existence in this human life, aging, sickness, and death. So all we have is here and now in this present moment. And our gratitude must be with those teachers who are with us here and now, in this lifetime. Our lifetimes have paralleled, so we've come across firstly the teachings of the Buddha, and then noble teachers in the Dharma of the Sangha subsequent to him, to convey this in a succinct and understandable manner that we can appreciate, put into practice, and experience for ourselves. So this is 2 weeks of celebration, 2 weeks of gratitude, that we can also use time for ourselves in our practice for reflection on that wonderful quality and virtue within ourselves of gratitude, in the support we have from maybe our local Sangha or local monasteries, monks, nuns, whom are there to offer these teachings to us, and certainly in this day and age, all of those that we can choose, of which there's a wealth of options online, to hear Dharma talks, reflections, and listen to the teachings of the Buddha. Now, of course, you can choose. We can listen to analytic discussion on the suttas, which is a very useful tool to assist us with our reading of the suttas, which are the word of the Buddha, and a very integral part of the practice. And then there are resources that we can watch, we can listen to, whereby we can try to gain understanding of the practical application of those teachings, of that word of the Buddha, in our everyday lives as lay people, and in my case as a monk. And these teachings that enable me, through the wisdom contained in them, to live like this. As it becomes wetter and wetter, everything gets wet. Nothing seems to be able to get dry because it's still quite warm and very, 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 very humid. But one learns to know that this is again impermanent, just anicca. It too will soon pass. Maybe a bit longer here than some other places, but it doesn't matter. In the present moment, if you're a little damp, at least you have something to wear, something to protect you, protect your modesty, protect you from the insects, the flies. It's enough. And the more we practice, the less we need for it to be enough. And enough is contentment. And it is this contentment where we find satisfaction, peace, tranquility, calmness, a coolness, or nibbana. So with this in mind, with the upcoming week of celebrations, for me, the Uposatha, tomorrow, I will leave it at that. I hope there's something useful there for you to apply in your everyday lives or share. And if so, please use it, or not, just let it go. Thank you for watching. Until next time, be happy, stay well, Sukhi Hotu.